All right, we're going to get started. Thank you very much for attending the webinar. This is the debut webinar for Content Propulsion, so we're very excited. And I got a great team behind me. It's just wanted to let you know that we are joined by many people from all over the world, and the Content Propulsion team is myself. In fact, let me write down who the other people of Content Propulsion are. Estardo Robles and Angie Bonatti. That is the Content Propulsion team, who is essentially, we're the ones that make up Content Propulsion. Just a little bit of background about who we are. We're a content marketing strategy and execution firm, which means we help companies come up with the ideal content marketing strategy for their business, and we help them execute this, meaning we actually carry out the strategy. We write the content, we do the metrics, and we repeat. All right, and so we're based in Austin, Texas, but we specialize in B2B content marketing, and specifically, we're really focusing on a lot of the bilingual content marketing between Latin America and the United States. But this webinar is for essentially companies who are interested in entering the United States, no matter where you're from. So even if you're in Asia, if you're in Europe, you're in different parts of the world, or even if actually you're in the United States and you want to start a content marketing strategy, and content marketing seems like a foreign country to you, this webinar is going to have some really good suggestions. All right. So if you have a question, we're going to be doing it a little different today. Just use Twitter and tweet me at Flabastida, and use the hashtag US content if you want to go ahead and tweet some of if you want to go ahead and share some of the information that we're talking about over here. Go ahead and use the hashtag US content. So again, if you want to send me a question, either do it if I'm following you, send me a direct message to Flabastida or just tweet at Flabastida. Okay, so thank you so much for that. Right. So before we get into the bulk of the webinar, what can content marketing do for you? So before we even get into what is content marketing, why do content marketing, what are the strategies and the tactics you should do, what can content marketing do for you? You know, is this a thing, or is this just a fad or a trend? Is this really having results for people? What are people able to achieve with content marketing? Okay, so I'm sure many of you, if not all of you, recognize this guy, Gary Vaynerchuk, from Wine Library TV. He's known as the Wine Guy, and as you can see, he's a Jets fan, so he's kind of an in-your-face New Yorker, New Jersey guy who really promotes wine. He started as a recently graduated student in around 2007, joining his parents' liquor firm. They were just a small liquor store in New Jersey, about $4 million in annual revenues. And so he was really trying to figure out a way to use some of the new media that was becoming available, you know, such things as YouTube and other type of free video sharing tools. He turned into essentially a household name by bringing wine to the masses, you know, by having a sort of your average guy next door style, you know, not using the hoity-toity language of typical wine connoisseurs, etc. You know, he's been on David Letterman. He's been on all the talk shows. What Gary Vaynerchuk did by just sharing videos on free video sharing sites was to bring his parents' liquor store from $4 million in revenue to $45 million, which is what they're averaging today. So he was a phenomenal success. But hey, this is Gary Vaynerchuk. You and I are not Gary Vaynerchuk. Is this type of success using free content, educational content, non-promotional content? Does this work for other people? All right, so let's look at another firm. This actually was my very first consulting company that I started back in 2009, right when the Great Recession hit, late 2008. I was laid off of my job in January of 2009, right after the return from the holidays. It was a great little Christmas gift. I found myself out of a job, and so I was really kind of with a decision. What am I going to do now? So I decided, well, I'm going to start a consulting company. I'm going to become a marketing consultant. I'd never been a marketing consultant before on my own, and I didn't even know what kind of clients to go after, what my niche was going to be, how I was going to contact them, how I was going to start making money. But what I did was I started blogging on a fairly consistent basis. It was, I would say, about 3 to 4 times a week in Spanish, while I got another job. I had to get a job, but it was making less than half of what I had been making before. But in my spare time, after work finished, I would go and start blogging. And as a result of all the blogging I was doing for the first 6 months, I got my very first client, a company out of Mexico, that hired me to write a white paper for them. And then from there, it just kind of became an avalanche. 3 other companies hired me, and that was the launch of my own consulting company, really just exclusively using content, my blog and an ebook that I published. Let's look at some other examples of companies that have really made it with content marketing, and then we'll get into sort of like the mechanics and the whys and the hows, etc. Lander. Lander is an Argentinian startup company. They're actually owned by a custom software development company out of Argentina called Making Sense. They're a small custom software development company, and they decided to start their own landing page application. Essentially, it's an easy way for non-technical people to come in and, if they want to have a landing page to sell a digital product or to drive email subscriptions, you would subscribe to Lander, right? That Lander is kind of like Unbounce, for example. Lander started with essentially nothing, because another product they had before was exclusively for the Spanish-speaking market. So they really didn't have any U.S.-speaking members of a database, so to speak. But what they started doing, they started blogging like crazy. And now today, if you look at Google and you type in the phrase landing page application, you can see that they are the number 3 organic result on Google. All these are sponsored because they say ad next to them, but they're the number 3 organic result in Google. So that's not bad for a little Argentinian landing page company. In fact, I couldn't fit it here on a screenshot, but if you take away application and you just write landing pages in Google, they're actually the number 4 result. So up there with the big guys, right? So this stuff works, and you can see that from like a foreign company right here. There are other startups who have really launched into the scene. If you compare a company from another country, if you're coming from Latin America or Europe or Asia, India, etc., coming into the United States market, it's like you're a startup. You're starting from scratch, and these startups here essentially started from scratch, and they all became very important companies using a blogging and a content creation strategy. HubSpot, of course, Kissmetrics, Buffer, Lander, Unbounce, Copyblogger Media. They have actually launched 3, and I misspelled synthesis over there, but 3 technology companies just from one blog. They launched Studio Press, which is a premier WordPress theme, Synthesis, which is premier WordPress hosting, and Rainmaker Systems, which is now it's the first open source hosted WordPress solution specifically designed for marketers, right? And then I did a little research, and so you can actually even see that Indian startups are using content marketing. I posted this article if you want to copy the URL. And by the way, this is being recorded, so I'll be emailing everybody a link to this recording once this is done. But if you wanted to go and navigate to this, you can actually see a list of some Indian startups who are using content marketing to launch onto the scene. Okay, so what is content marketing? Okay, let's look at that. Is content marketing blogs? I mean, is it just all about blogging, blogging your way to success? Or, is content marketing actually marketing your content, right? So, this is Dan Kennedy's book, The No-U.S. Guide to Brand Building, right? So, kind of a very, very in-your-face style of marketing information. Or is content marketing, the sort of viral content that we see sites like BuzzFeed sharing, the kind that's typically getting 2,000 to 3,000 or even up to hundreds of thousands of clicks and shares on Facebook. Here's this kind of sensationalistic story about this Australian guy with 203 Simpsons characters tattooed on his back. Is that content marketing? Well, it's kind of all of those and none of those. And so what I'd like to do is, for those of you who are on this call who are already very familiar with this, please bear with me. And there are some on the call who content marketing is fairly new, but let's go to the source, Content Marketing Institute out of Cleveland, Ohio. Great people. What do they say about it? They say that content marketing is a marketing technique to creating and distributing valuable. That word valuable is going to come up later on in this presentation. Just let that stick in your head a little bit. Relevant and consistent content to attract and acquire a clearly defined audience with the object of driving profitable customer action. Okay, so there's content and there's marketing, right? So the content part basically is creating a lot of content, but some people forget about the marketing. A friend of mine, John Rue, who is a very prominent copywriter here in Austin, wrote a blog post that said it's content marketing, just because so many people think all you have to do is create content and not do any marketing, right? So it's content marketing. And I really, really like this book by Jay Baer called Utility, and he really nails the essence of content marketing. Content marketing is instead of marketing, it's instead of marketing that's needed by companies, it's marketing that's wanted by customers, right? So essentially, content marketing is a change in your mentality about how you see marketing, right? It's not about promoting and talking about your products, about the features and details of your products, and about how your products are going to benefit your customers. Content marketing is about the value that you provide your customers so that your customers or your prospects will actually want to consume this content, right? It's all about value, right? It's all about giving away real true value up front before you even ask them to buy something from you. That's kind of a change in, it's a change in mentality from the way we've been used to selling for all these years, right? Where we're not going to give any valuable information until the customer gives us something, right? This is about providing value first, right? And it seems like as though content marketing has become just so popular all of a sudden. We're starting to see it everywhere. It's mentioned on so many social media posts and blogs, etc. It's become overused. Overbeaten, now everybody's tired about it. Everyone's talking about anti-content marketing, et cetera. But is it new? Is it really new? Actually, it's not new. It's older than direct mail and TV advertising. In fact, it's even older than the United States. And I was helping my son, who's in his first year of the university, do some research on Benjamin Franklin, trying to come up with some ideas. And I realized that actually Benjamin Franklin was the first content marketer in recorded history. Maybe, if you even go back to Plato and Socrates and all those guys, they were content marketers. But really, if you look at, recent history, Poor Richard's Almanac was a periodical that Benjamin Franklin started publishing in 1739. And why did he publish this? He published this in reality to promote his printing business. So he had set himself up in business in Philadelphia to provide outsourced printing for people who wanted to print Bibles or newspapers or what have you. And he used Poor Richard's Almanac to write and publish valuable, entertaining information that got much recognition, even to this day, as being very high quality content in and of itself. So So again, we're starting to see the whole thing that I mentioned at the beginning about value and about consistency, right? Let's fast forward to the 20th century. The Michelin Guide. This was something that I was turned on to by my friend Gerardo Dada, who's the CMO over at Solar Winds. He did a presentation on content marketing earlier this year, and he brought up this example, which I didn't even know about. Michelin was one of the first tire companies when there was only 3,000 cars in France. They printed 34,000 copies of different guides to Europe. So before the car, most people had never gone and explored the different cities in Europe. And these guides provided very enticing descriptions of everything you could do if you visited Berlin, if you visited Madrid, if you went to Milan, etc. They printed 34,000 copies because their idea was that more people were going to want to buy cars, and people were going to obviously go through tires and need to buy new tires. So it was really a smart content marketing strategy. Okay, so really, when you're a content marketing, when you're starting to do content marketing, you've really got to think like a media company. Okay, so how do media companies think, right? Again, here comes the value, but they got to create valuable, high quality content. You're almost giving away your secret sauce, if you will. In fact, sometimes people do give away their intellectual property. And I actually get this question often. How can you protect yourself from giving away your intellectual property so your competitors don't steal your secrets and you don't give so much away that your customers won't hire you? Well, actually, that is the key to success in content marketing. You don't give away everything, obviously, but you give away enough true value, enough of your secrets, so people will see you as an authority. People see you as as a trusted source of information. This person knows what they're talking about, etc. And your competitors, your competitors are giving this stuff away too. All the best content marketers are out there really giving away the best information. Provide guidance, right? So what do media companies do? They educate in the B2B field, for example. If you go to CIO.com or if you go to Fast Company, these magazines, media companies, they educate. They don't sell. They're not out there trying to pitch anything. They're just providing education, right? Share and showcase your expertise, right? So what's the mantra out there? Don't tell them, show them, right? Don't tell somebody how much you know, or don't tell somebody how good your product is. Show them. And really the most effective publications out there, what do? They answer customer questions. If you go to Cosmo magazine, if you go to the checkout line at your nearest grocery store and you see Cosmopolitan, they're all about the top 10 list, top 20 ways to be sexy on your next date or something. Those are things that young 20-something, 30-something, and even 40-something women are always thinking about. And so they're always answering the questions, and that's what you've got to do too. And written in the language of your customer without exaggerations or superlatives. I don't know if you've heard of the term gobbledygook, but that's really so pervasive in the B2B world, using language that's so corporate, so, using jargon and buzzwords, et cetera. And really what customers and your readers want to see is they just want to see plain language that just talks to them in a very friendly, open, and no BS way, right? So this is the essence of what content marketing is all about. And really, at the end of the day, it has to reflect your company values, and you got to make it interesting and entertaining. Okay, so why content marketing? And I'll just go into a little bit of the why content marketing before we get into the 5 simple steps that I talked about. So why content marketing? Content marketing has become, even though it's as old as at least Benjamin Franklin, if not the Greek philosophers, content marketing has become an urgency, if not a necessity now. In fact, I argue that it is a necessity because of the fact that there is no longer a media monopoly, right? So it used to be before the internet, there were 3 or 4 or 5 television channels. Then there was a few newspapers in your town, and you could essentially advertise your way to success. Or if there was only one telephone in the house and there was no caller ID and and you didn't have a cell phone, people could cold call their way into your house. And that was the way to market. But that's not the case anymore, obviously. We're all living in a world where there's, as of the printing of the book, Control, Alt, Delete by Mitch Joel, 14.3 trillion web pages. That was 2 years ago. Obviously, that's grown exponentially. So what does that do? That gives your customers a lot of choice, too much choice, actually. So if you're not providing them with anything valuable or interesting or entertaining, they're going to be gone in 2 seconds. Okay. Banner blindness. We're all immune to advertising, whether it's a banner ad on a website that's full of spammy advertisements, or whether it's commercials on TV. Not only do we avoid advertisements or commercial type stuff on purpose, we naturally filter it out. It's gotten to the point where people don't even see advertisements anymore. We tune it out naturally. The traditional methods of cold calling and spamming, email, etc. People can see that stuff a mile away. It just doesn't work. The only way it works is if you, I don't know, if you can make 200 cold calls a day, which some stockbrokers actually do. But I don't answer my phone anymore, and I don't know a lot of people who answer their phones. My kids don't answer my phone calls when I call. I have to literally call them about 5 times before they answer, because then they say, "Dad, what's up?" Okay. And then, again, from the book Control, Alt, Delete by Mitch Joel, I really recommend this book, talked about how, even as in a span of 1 year, from 2010 to 2011, your customers are looking at, have jumped from looking at 5.27 sources of information to 10.4 sources of information before they make a decision to purchase something. So that's a lot of sources of information that people are using, that they're researching online before they purchase anything. So now let's look at the sales process, right? And so this is a world that I'm very familiar with, having started life in the business world as first a phone rep, making those cold calls that everybody's avoiding today, and then out on the road, visiting clients, putting lots of wear and tear on my Michelin or Goodyear tires, which is the traditional enterprise sales process, right? So the traditional process, what is this? Now, you identify your opportunity. You get your list that your boss gives you, or you go out and identify a list of potential prospects. You make a phone call, or you get a lead from marketing. Then you qualify them. You have a meeting with a phone call, a meeting, then you have a follow-up meeting, then you submit a proposal. Okay, this is our detailed proposal. This is how much it costs. This is how long it's going to take, etc. Then you close the sale, and then you have the post-sale. And this whole process was pretty much controlled by the salesperson, right? So the salesperson, especially if you were working for a company that wasn't IBM or wasn't Sun Microsystems, you were pretty much a startup or not a known quantity. Your customers didn't know you at all. So it was really your responsibility as a salesperson to go out and to identify your customers and to make yourself known to your customers, right? That's been turned on its head now with the internet. And the CEB and Google, they essentially did a joint research project called The Digital Evolution of B2B Marketing. You can actually Google this and get the report. It's openly available for anybody. The traditional process has been cut in half. So prospects now are delaying talking to a sales executive. They're taking themselves pretty much through about 50% of the sales process by themselves, right? So they're doing their own research. They're looking at blogs. They're consulting third-party publications, research studies. They're calling up their friends. They're asking people on social media. They're really going through all this. And so you, as a salesperson, have lost control. I mean, this is the reality of the U.S. market, and every market really. But I think the U.S. is kind of like, this is a hyper is on steroids when it comes to this kind of stuff. You don't have any control anymore. When you finally talk to them, when they finally decide they want to talk to a salesperson, they are now armed. They're now armed and dangerous with all the information they need. So you don't have control over the information they see, right? So that's the reality, and that's the reason, it's in this environment that content marketing has become essential, because this part is the crucial part where you have to be seen and you have to be valuable to your customers and providing them with useful educational content. I have to repeat this mantra. It's all about value. Okay, so let's just look at the time. We're about halfway through. So I think we're on good track, and now let's get into the 5 simple steps. So given the what we just talked about right now, what are those 5 simple steps? And I think there's a lot here that just will seem familiar with you, and a lot that is going to be new. But I think it's important that we kind of look at this as an organic whole and try and tie this in together. This is especially true for smaller companies who are coming into the U.S. market. You don't have that. You don't have a huge marketing budget. So I can see, that would be the majority of the people on this phone call. There are only a few companies, for example, in Brazil, Mexico, Germany, France, etc., who are going to have huge marketing budgets and can come into the U.S. market with a splash, right? The majority of you are not going to be able to do so. What I did was we tried to really come up with some 5 simple steps that can help you enter, as well as a U.S. company trying to help you to launch your content marketing efforts. Really. But first, before we get into that, let's just look at one thing, which is sort of the context in which we're looking at content marketing now, and that is content shock. A friend of mine and a prominent blogger here in the United States, Mark Schaefer, wrote sort of a groundbreaking blog post towards the end of 2013 called "Content Shock." And essentially, what he did was he stated the obvious, the elephant in the room that everybody had already noticed, and that is now everybody's doing content marketing. The Content Marketing Institute, in studies that they conduct on a yearly basis, consistently show that B2B companies, 92% of B2B companies are already doing some form of content marketing, right? So there's an overwhelming amount of content out there, right? There's Doug Kessler from the Virtus Group over in the UK. He said that content marketing has now become content crap. There's so much low quality content out there, we're just drowning in it, right? So back in 2009, when I started my blog, back in 2007, when content marketer Brian Clark started Copy Blogger, if you just wrote a blog post about a certain topic and you wrote a very valuable educational, here's the top 5 steps, or here's the 7 things you have to take into consideration when doing this, etc., that would immediately get you highly ranked in Google. But now it's a different world, right? So what I'll be doing is I'll be tying into the 5 steps things that you have that are relevant for the world of content shock. And I think this is actually a good thing, because this means that you have to produce valuable content as opposed to just crappy content. Okay, number 1, find your niche. In his groundbreaking books, Crossing the Chasm and then Into the Tornado, Jeffrey Moore, Gary Moore is a guitarist. Jeffrey Moore talks about the chasm crossing strategy, which is to find and focus on a niche, right? And that niche is represented by the bowling ball, right? You focus on dominating that first pin in the bowling alley. Then after you dominate that first pin, your niche, which is represented by the pin, then you can knock down all these other pins after you've gotten to a certain growth stage, a certain critical mass, and then you can start knocking down all the other pins, right? But really, the proven chasm crossing strategy, as described by Jeffrey Moore and shown by so many people, Facebook, for example, was finding your niche. Facebook's niche initially was college students, right? And obviously they knocked that pin down way long ago, and now all the college students have gone on to other things. But that was what he used to get into the mainstream market, right? Because and I know that a typical strategy or maybe lack of strategy for somebody wanting to enter a new market, and I know that was my thing when I first started my consulting company, is I'll sell to whoever has money, right? Whoever wants to pay me money for this or that, even if it's not my core competency, that's who I'm going to sell to. That's actually a recipe for confusion, because if you sell to the generic market, you really are not going to have a clear, concise message that will resonate with anybody. If you're blogging, if you're creating ebooks, if you're creating infographics, your message is going to fly away into the atmosphere, and really nobody's going to pay attention to it because they're not going to know you're talking to them, right? But when you focus on a niche, if you focus on a specific group of people, then you know their vocabulary, you know their industry, you know their issues, dreams, and goals, and that allows you to really be hyper focused on your content marketing, dominate a niche. And really, I mean, I think that the value of a niche is that you can be either number one or number two in your particular niche. But what is a good niche strategy? So, okay, it's all fine and well to tell me, Fernando, that you want to go for a niche, but how do you find a good niche? I like what Sean D'Souza over at psychotactics.com. Sean D'Souza's he's crushing it over there in New Zealand. His niche strategy is what's called the hedgehog concept, right? Really the intersection of what are you deeply passionate about? What is it that you that if you do this every day, it would seem more like play than work, right? What can you be the best at the world at? I work with many custom software development companies, and at first it seems like as though almost every content software development company out there is the same. They all develop in .NET or they all are Python developers. They all have Microsoft certifications. They can all do this and that and the other. What's the differentiator? Well, if you dig down deep, and we've done exercises with companies, each one can find that one particular thing that they are better at than anybody else, right? Or that one thing that they do consistently that, for example, if you interview that company's customers, those customers will tell you, yes, I liked such and such a company because they are this way. They do this all the time, and I haven't seen that from anybody else. So if you can identify what are you really good at, or what is something that's unique about you, then you're about 2/3 of the way through your niche strategy. And then what drives your economic engine? So a little bit about this. Sean D'Souza talks about choosing a market in which the difference between choosing a popular market and choosing a market where none of your competitors are, right? So he says, do not choose a market where you're the only person selling into the market. That would seem to contradict my niche strategy, but hang in with me for a little bit and let me explain this. Sean D'Souza says to focus on a market that is actually very competitive, where there's a lot of your competitors going after that market. Why is that? Because that's the market where people are actually spending money. If you see a market in which people are, there's no other competitors, they're not spending money, right? And you can be the dominant player in that niche, but if nobody's spending money, you're going to be a poor dominant player in that niche. So what does he say? Go after a market that's very popular, but in another article that I'll share with you when I send this email out, there's another great strategy about how to dominate a popular niche, and that is to carve out a territory within that niche, right? So let me give you an example. There was I mentioned briefly copyblogger.com. Copyblogger is started off as a blog. Now it's a series of software and technology companies. But when Copyblogger started out, there was already several blogs on the market out there: ProBlogger, Remarkablogger, such and such blogger, and they were all providing advice and even selling information products like ebooks and courses about how to blog. Right? That was in the 2006, 2007 timeframe when blogging was just becoming popular and everybody was crazy about blogging. So it was a very crowded space. What did Copyblogger do? What Copyblogger do is they decided to carve out a territory within the blogging niche, which was already a very popular and crowded niche. And what they did was they said, okay, we're going to focus on providing blogging advice, but to people who are interested in copywriting, right? Hence the name copy blogger, which is a mixture of blogging and copywriting. So copywriting is a very tried and true market as well, where you have people like Dan Kennedy, you have people like Jeff Walker, you have people like Jay Abrams, et cetera, who are all teachers in direct marketing, the squeeze page, the long sales letter, et cetera, the kind of traditional, what would seem like to some people, high pressure sales type of copywriting. So what he did is he joined the two, and he kind of created a unique territory within the blogging thing. And he said, look, what people are doing with blogging is essentially copywriting. I'm going to teach people copywriting within the blogging space. And so what he did was he carved out this unique territory that just took off, right? So that's what I would recommend. Find a niche, which is a popular niche, but find out how you can create a unique territory within that niche. All right. Next, how do you then create content? What are you going to do if you're trying to enter the U.S. market, or if you're just starting out? What's the best thing to do? So the best and actually the easiest thing to do, especially if you don't have anybody on staff that's a professional writer who can write fluently in English, because that's an issue. Writing, and I'll get into that in the next slide. Writing in English, American English, to a U.S. audience, that takes a certain type of person, probably native born, somebody who can write in an engaging style. But how do you start off with this? What's the best way to start without having that person yet? So the best way, I think, is to create an educational webinar. So and the way to do this is, come up with a topic that can be your content marketing home run, right? And this webinar the intent of this webinar is to create a splash, to really go out there and not just to create a bunch of boring how-tos and top 10 lists, et cetera, but to start off hitting the market with a beautiful home run. And I like this picture here because I went with my son when he was just 10 years old to see Sammy Sosa play the Houston Astros, and he hit one of those beautiful home runs back when there was the home run competition between Sammy Sosa and a bunch of those other guys. But what is a content marketing home run? How can you make sure that your content is really makes a splash, gets lots of press, has people starting to share your content on social media? Choose a topic that is, first of all, super helpful, right? So you can create the all-encompassing guide to your topic, right? So what could the all-encompassing guide look like? So you could write you can do your webinar on, this is the complete guide to .NET, to hiring, the complete guide to hiring a .NET consulting company, right? Or the complete guide to nearshore outsourcing. Okay, I'm giving you lots of very broad topics, but you can choose smaller niche topics and write something which is really, really valuable content. The book Utility by Jay Baer, I mentioned him at the beginning. Utility was one of those types of home run type of content, right? It was really, he was writing this epic book about how to be extremely valuable. So think about, what is it that you know best? Thinking about this chart right here. What are you deeply passionate about, and what can you be the best in the world at? And use this as your big piece of home run content. Create a webinar about it, and share that with the world. Another way of doing content marketing home runs, research. Amanda McGuckin-Hager, who is a prominent marketer here in Austin, she does marketing, inbound marketing and content marketing for startups. And when McGuckin-Hager joined a company called InfoChimps specialize in big data. They had mailing lists, etc. So what she did was she organized to do original research together with essentially an association of database administrators. So there's an association out there where database administrators become members. And what she did was she approached this organization and she said, okay, I want to do some research through your members about big data, what people know about big data, about the market penetration of big data, et cetera. And original research is very convincing. When you have raw numbers to share, that could be super convincing, and that can help to change people's minds, right? And then the other way to create a content home run is to be super entertaining. That's very hard to do, and I recommend it more for the B2C space. If you want more about content marketing home runs, Doug Kessler is the one that talks about that, so you can Google him and find information. Okay, so what can you do with your content home run, right? So the next step is to cascade your content. Brian Massey, the conversion scientist, talks about the content cascade in one of his books and on his blog. So what is cascading your content? So the thing that you need to do, and this is exactly what I'm doing right now, is when you do your webinar, record your webinar, save it for posterity. When you record your webinar, whether it's an MP4 file or a WMV file, send that to a transcription service. Speechpad.com, TranscribeMe, and CLK transcription services are just three of the ones that I can think of offhand. I use CLK transcription. And for just $1 a minute, they can provide you with a complete written transcript of what you talked about in your webinar, right? So cascading your content means transforming that content, that recorded webinar, first into a transcript, and then you can hire, there's a lot of copywriters out there. Here in Austin, there's a bunch of freelancers and contractors who can do this fairly inexpensively. Take that transcript and then give it some structure, give it some design. You can create an ebook from that. And then from there, you can, obviously with your webinar, you can turn that into a YouTube video and put it on YouTube or Vimeo. Take the audio from that webinar and create a podcast. Create blog posts, slide shares, infographics. This is really repurposing your content. I think some other people call it atomizing your content, right? What can you do with this? So how do you do this? And like I said, there are copywriters that you can hire. Some people like to use Elance. Some people like to use Guru.com. It's kind of hit or miss over there. A great piece of advice that I heard from a consultant was, if you want to try and use Elance or Guru.com or a service like that, try about 5 of them, right? So if you say, okay, this is my budget, I have $500, I'm going to spend $100 on each person to write this piece of content. And basically what you're doing is you're doing a test, you're trying them out, because it's really kind of hit or miss with Elance or Guru.com, et cetera. The other way is, if you can get over, if you can come over and do an initial research visit here to the States, maybe spend 2 or 3 weeks, choose a city that you would like to maybe start off on. Some people like to go to Chicago, New York, Los Angeles. I recommend using Texas as a base, especially if you're from Latin America. Go to a city, start going to some of the meetups in town that specialize in freelance copywriters or content marketing. And in that meetup, you'll find writers who can, do this for not a lot of money. I mean, and I say not a lot of money, I don't mean dirt cheap, like you can get it done in some countries out in the Far East, but at least in a way that is a kind of a happy situation for both you and the copywriter. Okay. And then once you've done this, once you've created this sort of cascade of content based on your home run webinar, the overarching, all-encompassing guide to the space that you're passionate about, then go out and promote it. And that's going back to what I talked about in Content Shock. There is a really great resource published by a company called Digital Relevance. Digital Relevance published an ebook called The Content Promotion Manifesto, right? And the Content Promotion Manifesto, what they talked about was that essentially because of content shock now, because of the overwhelming amounts of content, you've really got to focus more on creating less content, but high quality content. So instead of blogging 5 times a week, maybe you blog 2 times a week or 1 time a week. Make sure it's high quality, it provides lots of value, and then spend more and more time on promoting that, right? So the triumvirate of content promotion is earned, paid, and owned. And earned, what is that? That's essentially PR, right? So that's going back to the old traditional way of PR. You can get people to at prominent publications where your audience is, where your customers are, where the publications that they read or go to on a regular basis. Get somebody to cover your piece of content, right? That's a little bit difficult, but if you have really unique, original content that provides some kind of original research, or it's maybe nobody has ever written a guide as comprehensive and as complete as you have, then you could get some press, right? But another great and simple way to get earned content is to volunteer to write guest posts for relevant publications. And there are so many publications out there who are really hungry for high quality content. For example, content marketers such as myself are contributing content to publications like relevance.com or contentmarketinginstitute.com. These publications actually survive and wouldn't be around right now if it wasn't for the content that is contributed to them by people like me and other people out there who are wanting to promote their own business. But of course, the content has to be valuable and it can't be promotional or commercial. So that's a great way of getting earned content. And earned content, earned media attention is the most powerful type of media attention you can get to promote all the content that lives on your website and on your social media sites, right? Because if it's on a third-party, popular, trusted source, that gives it legitimacy, right? You can also use paid promotional sources, right? So paid is advertising. I wouldn't recommend really PPC anymore, pay-per-click, Google AdWords, etc. There is a new kid on the block, and that's native advertising. Native advertising is actually getting to be very effective, and there are some really cool outfits that are doing this. Outbrain and Taboola are ones that come to mind. What is native advertising? Native advertising is essentially an article that looks just like it would be on your blog or in a magazine or a newspaper, but it's it has a little label on the top of it that says this is sponsored content, so people know you're not pulling the wool over anybody's eyes. You're not fooling anybody. So it's obvious that it is sponsored content, but the content in and of itself is so good and so valuable that people will find it interesting, right? So it's not overly commercial. You're not promoting your product. You're just providing good, valuable information. And the purpose of native advertising is to essentially promote your blog, right? So you're not selling any products here. You're selling your blog. You're selling your valuable content. So from the native advertisement, you provide really good tips. The five essential strategies for picking the right stocks or something. And then you could lead, for more information, come and visit our stock strategy blog, for example. And then owned content. Owned is essentially what you own, your Facebook, your LinkedIn, your Twitter. How can you use your own content to promote your blog? Well, if you have a website already that is somewhat popular in the United States, but you've got your blog hidden away and you're not promoting your blog posts or your ebooks, then do that, right? So on your homepage, have a section where it says, here's the most popular posts we have, even if it's on your homepage and not your blog page. Promote your content there. Obviously, you want to share your content if you're a B2B company on SlideShare and LinkedIn. SlideShare is one of the most underestimated social media outposts out there. It's a purely content sharing property that has become very prominent as a way to promote your PowerPoint content, even PDF ebooks, etc. And by the way, SlideShare is owned by LinkedIn. Okay. And then, and just a little bit about the structure of how to promote your own media. So if you produce webinars, videos, podcasts, infographics, blog posts, that's typically the free content that you will promote on your blog, right? But then there is the other content, the premium content. So maybe you write a 30-page ebook or a 10-page white paper or a research report. That is typically content that you can use as the bait, if you will, to generate leads. To get people to subscribe to your mailing list, right? And that's going to be behind a gate. And what that means is you send people using a call to action from any one of these pieces of content to a landing page. They fill out a form, give up their email address, and then they get the ebook, right? And this is also another essential way to use your own content, the content you own, to promote your high-value lead generation content. And this is a mistake that almost everybody makes, without exception. So really, most of us out here are making this mistake, is we don't have any calls to action on our blog posts, right? And what I mean by call to action is, when you go to a blog post, you might see on the right sidebar, or something like this, right? Or something like, or at the bottom of the blog post, you might have something like this. If you have a blog post about .NET development or about hiring a consulting company, that blog post, that person who's reading that, he wants to know more or she wants to know more. Provide them with information that's related to that. So here's our complete guide to hiring a .NET consulting company. If you want to learn more, click here, enter your email address, and get the ebook, right? Make sure to have these on every blog post. All right, and then landing pages. Landing pages is, the content, the call to action will take people to landing pages. You could use a landing page tool such as Lander, or you can use a tool like HubSpot or Unbounce or what have you. And here's a couple of landing pages from some companies in different areas. This is an identity management company. Here is, I'm sure some of you are familiar with Softtech, prominent Mexican consulting company in the IT managed services space, promoting one of their ebooks. Okay, finally, so that all seems very complicated, right? If you're going to enter the U.S. market and you have to come up with home run content, create a webinar, create, all these different things. Okay, I'm just a small company. I don't have the time or the resources to do all that. What can I do instead so I can just call people, or I want to email people, or just give me a list of people to call, or I just want to I just want to go after 200 companies. That's all I want to do. I want to call them. I want to get an appointment with them, etc. Well, as I showed you earlier, people are not answering their phones. Cold calling doesn't work that much anymore unless you're making 200 calls a day. Instead, use content-based selling, right? So there's a really good video about that by Trent Deersman over at Groove Digital Marketing, where he explains this in detail. But essentially, what do you do with the content-based selling? Come up with a list of maybe 200 prospects. Really, that's, if you're trying to go after 3,000 prospects, 5,000 prospects, that's too much for you to handle. But 200 prospects is a good way to start. And, I get a lot of questions, well, how am I going to find a list? I'm not even from the United States. How can I find a list of companies in my niche? How can I even find their phone numbers, their email addresses? There's lots of sources out there. I can send this to you in an email, with some of the top 5 database sources. You can actually pay for a service that'll actually get you names and contact information at companies in the United States. I used to work for one called Hoovers.com, which are now owned by Dun & Bradstreet. But now there's newer companies out there that, as a service, you can subscribe to their service, and you can get access to the millions and millions of companies, from small mom and pop companies to mid-sized companies, all the way to large enterprise companies. You can get information such as who are the IT directors, who are the HR managers, who are the different titles within the company. In many cases, you can get their direct phone numbers. In some cases, just the corporate phone number. And in some cases, you can actually even get their, what's all their social media information. Some even sell email addresses. That's kind of spammy. You don't want to be caught spamming anybody. But if you can email somebody directly and personally, that's great. In fact, that's what the content-based selling system does. If you have a finite list of maybe 200 prospects, 250 prospects, send them a personalized email, right? So this is really going to be an email prospecting system. Send them a personalized email. Don't write the same email to everybody, or don't say dear sir or dear ma'am or dear Mr. or Mrs. In the United States, people like to be called by their first name, right? So just send a personalized email to each one out there. But instead of pitching, instead of saying, yeah, I'd like to set up an appointment with you and talk about our products, or I'd like to talk about our services, send them some valuable information. Here's some information that I thought would be valuable to you. Link it to a blog post. The blog post could be on your blog, or it could be a third-party blog post that's relevant to your prospect, right? But if you send them information that is on your blog, then voila, guess what? You have one of those prominent calls to action on your blog post to download your piece of home run content, right? And you want to kind of keep this up on a regular basis. People obviously don't read their emails the first time you get it to them. So maybe I would say every 5 days or every week or maybe every 1 week and a half, send them a follow-up email. Trent Deersman gives some really good strategies for actually how you can automate this and send an auto-personalized email, if you can conceive of the concept, so that you can start generating leads this way by providing value, right? And that's what it harkens back to. We really want to go back to the original concept that we introduced at the beginning of the webinar, and that is providing value. Don't pitch people. Don't try and sell them something, because people can see that a mile away and they'll just delete your email and they'll put it into spam. Provide them something with value instead. And then finally, the bonus, this is number 6, if we had a number 6, measure and repeat. I mean, the beauty of content marketing on the web is that everything is measurable. Everything, if you want to find out what your conversion rate is, if you want to find out, even go so far as to find out which one of your LinkedIn shares created customers. You can even do that by using software like HubSpot. Full disclosure, we're a HubSpot partner and can provide you that kind of information. And then repeat this, right? So every quarter, create a piece of home run content. That content that's going to be so valuable, so all-encompassing, so informative, so educational. Create that cascade of content and repeat this every quarter. So I didn't leave a lot of time for questions, but I'll actually hang on here and wait for the, if you have any additional questions. Actually, I do have one question that I wanted to answer. So, what is the best content format out there? What's the content format that's most popular? Is it blog posts? Is it videos? Is it podcasts? Unfortunately now people don't really have a lot of time to read. So I'm a writer. I like to read. Writers typically like to read, but most people now, especially your busy executives, they just want a short video, or they want a podcast. Podcasting and video are really the formats that are taking off. The reason why is because, for example, podcasts can be discovered on iTunes. So if you create a podcast and you do really well with how to promote your podcast, iTunes will actually do the promotion for you. So you can get exposure to new subscribers through iTunes, right? And the other thing is that executives can download your podcast and listen to you while they're driving in the car or on the train to work in the morning. And that way they don't have to interrupt their busy schedule to read a blog post or something, right? So podcasting is great. Videos are great as well. Jay Baer has now started a series, a 3-minute video series every week. Right. Any more questions? All right, and I got another question too. How do you find a good sales rep to sell for you when you're in the United States, right? So there are people that would like to hire a commission-only salesperson, somebody who will, they don't have to pay that salesperson until that person makes the sale. That's kind of like, that's the ideal scenario, I guess, if you're selling something. You would like to find somebody who is essentially free, and all you have to do is pay for them when they sell something. Unfortunately, that is sort of pie in the sky thinking. That's really not going to happen. A salesperson who is good is not going to sell for you on commission. You have to hire a salesperson who is good, because if they're good, they're already selling for somebody else. That person's already selling, paying them a high base salary. And if you're relying on somebody who's just commission only, they're either selling a lot of different products, and they're probably selling somebody who's very well known, and they won't give your company any attention at all, or they're not very good, right? So really, the best person to sell your services is you, right? And even if you have a little struggle with English, or it's not your first language, they don't mind. People in the United States are not going to care if your English is not TV news anchor English, right? They appreciate somebody who sincerely wants to make it in the U.S. market, right? And the best way to if you want to hire a salesperson, you first of all figure out how to sell your stuff in the United States, and then hire a salesperson to duplicate what you've already discovered how to do. So that's my answer to that question. Any other questions? Again, you could tweet me at Flabastida. All right. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. And we'll be sending this to you in an email with the recording shortly.